Lucas Hayes gripped the steering wheel as headlights flooded his rear-view mirror, the same black SUV that had been following him for the last 3 miles. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Stop helping her or your daughter pays the price." His heart stopped. In his passenger seat sat Olivia Carter, his best friend since college, clutching a flash drive worth $50 million in stolen evidence. 24 hours ago, Lucas was just another broke single dad driving strangers around Seattle at night. Now he was being hunted by one of the most powerful men in the energy industry, and the only thing standing between his child and danger was a decision he'd made without thinking twice, to answer the door when Olivia showed up crying in the rain. But before I tell you how a rideshare driver ended up in a war against corporate corruption, let me take you back to where this all started. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels. And if you believe loyalty still matters in this world, hit that like button and stick with me until the end. Because what Lucas and Olivia are about to face will test everything they thought they knew about courage, friendship, and survival. The dashboard clock read 2:47 a.m. When Lucas Hayes pulled into the parking lot of his apartment complex, every muscle in his body aching from another 12-hour shift. The rain had finally stopped, leaving Seattle's streets slick and reflective under the yellow glow of streetlights. He turned off the engine of his 10-year-old Honda Civic and sat there for a moment, rubbing his burning eyes. 30 years old, and this is what success looks like, he thought bitterly. A cramped one-bedroom apartment in Northgate, a car that burned oil, and a bank account that never quite made it past 3 digits before rent was due. But then he thought of Maya, his 4-year-old daughter, asleep upstairs with Mrs. Chen, the retired nurse who watched her during his night shifts. Everything he did, every mile driven, every drunk passenger tolerated, every humiliation swallowed, was for her. That made it bearable. Barely. Lucas grabbed his phone and the empty coffee thermos from the cup holder, then pushed open the car door. The cold night air hit him like a slap, waking him up just enough to make it to the stairs. He was halfway across the parking lot when he noticed the car. A silver Audi sedan, engine off, parked 3 spaces from his usual spot. The windows were tinted, but not enough to hide the silhouette of someone sitting in the driver's seat. Lucas slowed his pace, his tired brain suddenly alert. This neighborhood wasn't terrible, but it wasn't the kind of place where someone sat alone in an Audi at 3 in the morning. He was debating whether to walk past or turn around when the driver's door opened. A woman stepped out, and Lucas felt his breath catch. "Olivia?" She stood under the parking lot light like an apparition, wearing an expensive gray coat that was soaked through, her dark hair plastered to her face. But it was her expression that stopped him cold. Eyes red and swollen, mascara tracked down her cheeks, hands trembling as she held her car keys. "Lucas," her voice cracked. "I didn't know where else to go." He was moving before he even processed the decision, crossing the distance between them in seconds. "What happened? Are you hurt?" I'm okay. She pressed a hand to her mouth, fighting for control. "Can we go inside? Please, I can't be out here." Lucas glanced around the parking lot, suddenly aware of how exposed they were. Yeah, of course. Come on." He guided her toward the stairs with a hand on her elbow, feeling how badly she was shaking. Olivia Carter, the woman who'd been the smartest person in every room at the University of Washington, who'd graduated summa cum laude with a finance degree, who'd climbed the corporate ladder so fast she'd made CFO by 28, was falling apart in a Northgate parking lot at 3 in the morning. They'd been best friends since sophomore year, an unlikely pair that somehow worked. Lucas, the working-class kid on partial scholarship, and Olivia, the driven perfectionist who studied like her life depended on it. They'd balanced each other out. He taught her to relax, she pushed him to aim higher. Even after graduation, when their paths diverged dramatically, they'd stayed close. Or as close as possible when one person was building an empire and the other was barely surviving. But Lucas hadn't seen Olivia in person for almost 4 months. Their friendship had become late-night texts and occasional phone calls, ships passing in completely different oceans. Now she was here, and something was very, very wrong. Lucas unlocked his apartment door as quietly as possible, not wanting to wake Mrs. Chen or Maya. The living room was dark, except for the small lamp Mrs. Chen always left on. He could hear her soft snoring from the couch, where she usually dozed while watching Korean dramas. "Come to the kitchen," Lucas whispered, leading Olivia past the sleeping woman. The kitchen was barely big enough for both of them. Lucas pulled out one of the two chairs at his tiny table, and Olivia collapsed into it, finally letting the tears come in silent, shaking waves. He grabbed the dish towel, the closest thing to a tissue he could find, and handed it to her, then filled a glass with water from the tap. "Here," he said softly, setting it in front of her. "Take your time." She pressed the towel to her face, shoulders heaving. Lucas had seen Olivia cry exactly 3 times in the 8 years he'd known her. Once when her mother died. Once when she got the CFO position she'd worked her entire life for. And now. He pulled out the other chair and sat down, waiting. The kitchen was so quiet he could hear the refrigerator humming, the distant sound of a car passing on the street below, his own heartbeat thudding in his ears. Finally, Olivia lowered the towel. Her face was blotchy and swollen, but her eyes had that same fierce intelligence they'd always had. Even in crisis, even falling apart, Olivia Carter's mind was working. "I found something," she said, her voice hoarse. "At Voss Energy, something bad." Lucas leaned forward. Voss Energy was the corporation where Olivia had worked for the past 6 years, rising from a junior analyst to chief financial officer. It was one of the largest privately held energy companies in the Pacific Northwest, with contracts spanning from Alaska to California. "What kind of something?" Olivia's hands twisted the damp towel. "Fraud. Massive fraud. They've been cooking the books for at least 3 years, maybe longer, falsifying revenue reports, hiding losses, billing for services never performed. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars, Lucas. Maybe more." The weight of those words settled over the cramped kitchen like a physical presence. Lucas had driven enough executives around Seattle to know that corporate fraud wasn't uncommon, but the scale Olivia was describing was staggering. "You're sure?" he asked. "I found the real accounts." She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small flash drive, holding it up between them. "Everything's on here: bank records, email chains, falsified contracts, payment receipts. I spent 2 months piecing it together, double-checking every transaction. It's ironclad." Lucas stared at the tiny piece of plastic and metal. "So you're going to the SEC? The FBI?" "I tried." Olivia's voice turned bitter. "I went to Adrian first, gave him a chance to explain, to fix it. That was my mistake." Adrian Voss. Lucas had never met the man, but he'd heard Olivia talk about him plenty. The founder and CEO of Voss Energy, a self-made billionaire who'd built his empire from a single wind farm in eastern Washington. Charismatic, ruthless, untouchable. What did he do? "He offered me $20 million to bury it." Olivia laughed, but there was no humor in it. Just like that. Walked around his desk, put his hand on my shoulder like we were old friends, and told me I could retire at 30 if I was smart. When I said no, when I told him I was taking it to the authorities, everything changed. She took a shaky breath, her composure cracking again. "The next day, my accounts were frozen. All of them. Checking, savings, investments, everything. My company email was disabled. My access badge stopped working. By noon, I was locked out of my own life." "He can't just—" Lucas started, but Olivia cut him off. "He can. He did. And that was just the beginning." Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. "This morning, 2 men came to my apartment. They didn't break in, didn't threaten me directly. They just stood in my lobby for 20 minutes, making sure I saw them. Then one of them smiled at me and said, 'Mr. Voss hopes you'll reconsider your hasty decision.' And they left." Lucas felt anger flare hot in his chest. "Did you call the police?" "And tell them what? 2 men stood in a public lobby? I have no proof they were sent by Adrian. No proof of anything except this." She held up the flash drive again. "And if I go to the police now, before I can get this to someone who can actually do something with it, Adrian will know. He has connections everywhere, Lucas. Lawyers, politicians, judges. The Seattle PD probably has 6 people on his payroll. So what are you going to do?" Olivia met his eyes, and he saw the fear there, raw and real. "I have a contact. A federal prosecutor in the fraud division who's been building a case against corporate corruption in the energy sector. I reached out to her 6 weeks ago, before I confronted Adrian. She's expecting me to deliver this evidence in person. No digital transfer, no middlemen. But I can't go to her directly. Not now. They're watching me." "Who's watching you?" I don't know, Adrian's people, private security maybe, or just hired muscle. She wrapped her arms around herself. I've been driving around for hours trying to figure out what to do. I couldn't go home. I couldn't go to a hotel. My cards aren't working. I couldn't think of anyone who wouldn't be compromised, who Adrian couldn't get to. Her voice broke. And then I thought of you. Lucas felt something shift in his chest. She'd driven across the city in the middle of the night, scared and alone, and she'd come to him. Not to her corporate friends with their lawyers and connections, not to her family in California. To Lucas Hayes, broke rideshare driver living in a one-bedroom apartment in Northgate, because she trusted him. Okay, he said quietly. Okay, you can stay here tonight. We'll figure out the rest in the morning. Olivia shook her head. Lucas, you don't understand what you're offering. These people are dangerous. If Adrian finds out I'm here, if he thinks you're helping me, I don't care. You should care. You have Maya to think about. The mention of his daughter sent a cold spike through Lucas's gut, but he pushed it aside. Maya's safe. Mrs. Chen's here, and tomorrow she goes to her mom's place for the week. His ex-wife, Jennifer, had full custody every other week. It was an arrangement that killed him, but right now it meant Maya would be far away from whatever this was. I'm not letting you face this alone, Liv. You came to me because you knew I wouldn't. Fresh tears spilled down Olivia's cheeks, but she nodded. Thank you. I just need a couple of days to make contact with the prosecutor, set up a secure handoff. Then I'll be out of your life. And you can forget this ever happened. Lucas seriously doubted he'd ever forget this, but he didn't say so. Instead, he stood up and opened the cupboard above the sink, pulling out the spare blanket he kept there. You take my bed. I'll sleep on the floor next to Maya's room. Lucas, no. Not arguing about this. You look like you haven't slept in a week. 3 days, Olivia admitted. Every time I close my eyes, I see those men in my lobby. Lucas felt another surge of anger at Adrian Voss, this faceless billionaire who thought he could terrorize people into submission. You're safe here. I promise. Get some sleep. Olivia stood on shaky legs, then surprised him by pulling him into a tight hug. I'm sorry, she whispered against his shoulder. I'm so sorry for dragging you into this. You didn't drag me anywhere. Lucas hugged her back, feeling how fragile she seemed despite her usual armor of confidence. That's what friends do. We show up. Lucas woke 4 hours later to sunlight streaming through the living room window and the smell of coffee brewing. For a moment, he was disoriented. He'd been dreaming about driving through Seattle in the rain, except every passenger had Adrian Voss's face, and they all kept asking him where Olivia was hiding. Then reality crashed back in. Olivia. The flash drive. The men in the lobby. He sat up from his makeshift bed on the floor, his back screaming in protest. Mrs. Chen was already gone. She always left at 7 a.m. sharp. Lucas could hear movement in the kitchen and the soft murmur of voices. One was Maya's bright chatter. The other was Olivia's, and she actually sounded like she was laughing. Lucas stood and stretched, then padded barefoot into the kitchen. Maya was sitting at the table in her Moana pajamas, swinging her legs and talking a mile a minute about something that had happened at preschool. Olivia sat across from her, showered and dressed in the same clothes from last night, but looking more like herself. She'd found the coffee maker and made a full pot, something Lucas rarely bothered with anymore since he usually just grabbed gas station coffee between shifts. Daddy! Maya spotted him and her whole face lit up. Miss Olivia made pancakes. Real ones, not the frozen kind. I hope that's okay, Olivia said quickly. I found the mix in your pantry and thought, it's great. Lucas moved to the table and pressed a kiss to the top of Maya's curly hair. What do you say to Miss Olivia? Thank you for the pancakes, Miss Olivia, Maya sang out, then immediately returned to her story about how her friend Jasper had eaten a bug during outdoor time. Lucas poured himself coffee and leaned against the counter, watching Olivia interact with his daughter. It was surreal, two completely different parts of his life colliding in his cramped kitchen on a Thursday morning. Olivia, who usually spent her mornings in executive meetings and conference calls, was patiently listening to a 4-year-old explain the social dynamics of preschool with the same focus she probably gave to quarterly earnings reports. When Maya finished her pancakes and ran off to play with her stuffed animals before Jennifer came to pick her up, Olivia finally looked at Lucas. She's beautiful, she said softly. And so much like you. Same eyes, same smile. Yeah, well, she got her mother's brains, thank goodness. Lucas sat down in Maya's vacated chair. How are you feeling? Better? Clearer? Olivia wrapped her hands around her coffee mug. I'm sorry about last night. I was a mess. You had a right to be. Still do. Maybe. But falling apart doesn't help anything. That was the Olivia he knew. Always trying to solve problems, always moving forward. I've been thinking about next steps. I need to contact my prosecutor friend, but I can't use my phone. Adrian's people could be tracking it. So use mine. Olivia shook her head. If they're monitoring your association with me, which they will be once they figure out where I am, that's not safe either. I need a burner phone. Untraceable. Lucas thought for a moment. There's a convenience store in Lake City that sells prepaid phones. I can pick one up this morning. I'll pay you back as soon as I can access my accounts again. Liv, I'm not worried about... The sharp knock on the door cut him off mid-sentence. They both froze. Lucas checked his phone. 8:15 a.m. Jennifer wasn't supposed to pick up Maya until 9. Another knock, harder this time. Mr. Hayes, Seattle Police Department. Olivia's face went white. They found me. You don't know that. Lucas stood, his heart hammering. Stay here. Let me handle this. He moved to the door and checked the peephole. 2 uniformed officers stood in the hallway, looking official and bored. Not the expression of people serving a warrant or making an arrest. Lucas opened the door but kept the chain on. Can I help you? The older officer, a stocky man with graying hair, consulted a small notebook. Lucas Hayes? That's me. We're investigating a missing person report. Olivia Marie Carter, age 30, last seen leaving her apartment in First Hill yesterday evening. Her employer reported her missing when she failed to show up for an important meeting and hasn't responded to calls or emails. Do you know Ms. Carter? Lucas forced his expression to stay neutral, even as his mind raced. Her employer. Adrian Voss had called in a missing person report. Smart. It meant police would be looking for Olivia, asking questions, creating a paper trail that made it look like he was the concerned boss rather than the person she was running from. Yeah, I know Olivia. We went to college together. When was the last time you saw or spoke to her? Maybe 3-4 months ago? We text sometimes, but we're both pretty busy. The officer made a note. And you haven't heard from her in the last 24 hours? No, sir. The lie came easily, smoothly. Lucas had learned a long time ago how to talk to cops. Polite, but not too friendly. Helpful, but not volunteering extra information. It was a survival skill in neighborhoods like this. If you do hear from Ms. Carter, we'd appreciate a call. Her family's very worried. The officer handed Lucas a business card. There's a number on there for the detective handling the case. Sure thing. I hope she's okay. So do we. Thank you for your time, Mr. Hayes. Lucas closed the door and waited until he heard their footsteps fade down the hallway before letting out the breath he'd been holding. When he turned around, Olivia was standing in the kitchen doorway, her face stricken. He's already mobilized the police, she whispered. Lucas, this is worse than I thought. Adrian's making it look like I'm unstable, like I've disappeared. When I surface with this evidence, he's going to say I fabricated it while having some kind of breakdown. Then we need to move faster. Lucas pulled out his phone. I'll cancel my shifts for the next couple days, tell them I'm sick. We get you that burner phone, you contact your prosecutor friend, and we get this evidence into the right hands before Adrian can control the narrative. What about Maya? Jennifer picks her up in 45 minutes. She'll be at her place until next Thursday. She won't be anywhere near this. Olivia started pacing the small living room. This is insane. You're risking everything. Your job, your custody arrangement, maybe your freedom if Adrian decides to come after you too. Olivia, stop. Lucas crossed to her, gripping her shoulders until she looked at him. I'm in this now. You came to me, and I'm not going to abandon you halfway through. We're going to fix this together. Okay? She searched his face for a long moment, then nodded. Okay. Together. Jennifer arrived exactly at 9, as she always did. She was nothing if not punctual, one of the many ways she was a better parent than Lucas could ever hope to be, or at least that's what she reminded him of during their more contentious custody exchanges. Daddy, I don't want to go yet, Maya whined, clinging to his leg. I want to play with Miss Olivia more. You'll see Daddy again next week, sweetheart. Jennifer's voice was patient but firm as she gently pried Maya's hands loose. She glanced at Olivia with polite curiosity. I don't think we've met. Olivia Carter, old friend from college. Olivia shook Jennifer's hand with a professional smile that gave nothing away. Just passing through Seattle on business. How nice. Jennifer's tone suggested it was anything but, and Lucas could see the questions forming behind her eyes. She'd always been suspicious of his female friends, convinced during their brief marriage that he was constantly on the verge of cheating. The irony was that Lucas had never even looked at another woman while they were together. It was Jennifer who'd eventually decided she needed more than a perpetually exhausted rideshare driver could provide. Lucas knelt down and pulled Maya into a tight hug. You be good for your mom, okay? I love you to the moon and back. And around all the stars, Maya finished their ritual, squeezing his neck. Love you, Daddy. Watching them leave was always the hardest part of Lucas's week, but today it came with a flood of relief. Whatever happened next, Maya would be safe at Jennifer's place across town, far away from corporate fraud and federal prosecutors and men who stood in lobbies making threats. As soon as the door closed behind them, Lucas turned to Olivia. Let's go get that phone. Bolt. The convenience store in Lake City was exactly the kind of place that didn't ask questions. Lucas bought a prepaid phone and a $60 phone card with cash, while Olivia waited in the car, hood up, sunglasses on despite the overcast sky. Back in the parking lot, she activated the phone with shaking hands. What's your prosecutor friend's name? Lucas asked. Sarah Mendoza. She's with the U.S. Attorney's Office, White Collar Crime Division. Olivia pulled out her regular phone, now powered off, and copied a number from her contacts onto a scrap of paper. I'm going to call her office, see if I can set up a meeting for today. Do it! Olivia dialed, and Lucas watched her face transform as the call connected. The fear receded behind a mask of professional competence. This was the Olivia who commanded boardrooms and negotiated million-dollar deals. Hi, this is Olivia Carter calling for Sarah Mendoza. Yes, I understand she's in a meeting. This is regarding the Voss energy matter we discussed previously. No, I can't leave a callback number. I need to speak with her directly. It's urgent. Can you? Her face fell. I see. When do you expect her back? There was a long pause, then Olivia's shoulders slumped. No, that's fine. Thank you. She ended the call and stared at the phone. What's wrong? Sarah's in Washington, D.C. for the rest of the week, testifying before a congressional committee on energy regulation. Her assistant says she's unreachable until Monday at the earliest. Lucas processed this. So we have to keep you hidden for the next 4 days? At least. And Lucas, we can't go back to your apartment. The police know to look for me there now. If they do a welfare check, if they get a warrant, she was right. His apartment was burned. Okay, let me think. Lucas's mind raced through options. Hotels were out. Olivia's cards didn't work and his wouldn't cover 4 days. Friends? The few he had were either family men who'd ask too many questions or former co-workers who couldn't be trusted to keep quiet. Then he remembered. I have a place. Sort of. Sort of? My cousin Danny has a cabin about 45 minutes from here, up in the mountains past Snoqualmie. He only uses it during ski season. I've got a key. I checked on it for him last summer when he thought there might be a leak. Olivia brightened us. That's perfect. Isolated, off the grid? Barely. There's no internet, spotty cell service, and I think the heat runs on a wood stove. But there's running water and it's got a roof. Lucas started the engine. We'll need to grab some supplies, food, firewood, warm clothes. You up for that? I'm up for anything that keeps me alive until Monday. To it. They spent the next 2 hours preparing for what Lucas privately thought of as their fugitive camping trip. Olivia stayed in the car while he made quick trips into a grocery store, a hardware store, and finally back to his apartment to grab sleeping bags, extra clothes, and after a moment's hesitation, the baseball bat he kept under his bed. Just in case. Each time he returned to the car with another load of supplies, Olivia looked a little more anxious, constantly scanning the parking lot for threats. Lucas couldn't blame her. Every black SUV, every well-dressed man in a suit, every car that lingered too long could be Adrian's people. By the time they were loaded up and heading east on I-90, the clouds had broken enough to let weak afternoon sunlight through. Lucas kept checking his mirrors, looking for anyone who might be following, but the highway traffic looked normal, random, anonymous. "Tell me about Maya's mom," Olivia said suddenly, breaking the tense silence. Lucas glanced at her, surprised. "Jennifer? You've never really talked about what happened, just that you got divorced when Maya was a baby." It wasn't a conversation Lucas particularly wanted to have, but talking was better than sitting in silence imagining worst-case scenarios. "We got married young, too young. I was 23, working 2 jobs, thought I could support a family through sheer force of will." He paused. "Jennifer was smart, is smart. She deserved better than a husband who was never home, who was always exhausted, who couldn't give her the life she wanted. That's not fair to yourself. Maybe, but it's true. She tried to make it work for Maya's sake, but eventually she just gave up. Met a guy at her office, marketing director, good salary, actually has time to take her to dinner and remember anniversaries. They're getting married next month." Olivia was quiet for a moment. "Do you still love her?" "I don't know. I love who we were, maybe, before the stress and the bills and the fights." Lucas took the exit for Snoqualmie Pass. "But what I feel now is mostly just tired. Tired of sharing custody. Tired of seeing Maya every other week like I'm some visiting uncle. Tired of knowing I failed at the most important thing I've ever tried to do." "You didn't fail. Maya's happy, healthy, loved. That's not failure. Tell that to the child support payments I can barely afford." They drove in silence after that, winding through increasingly dense forest as civilization fell away behind them. The cabin was another 20 minutes past the main highway, down a barely maintained dirt road that Lucas's Civic handled with difficulty. When they finally arrived, Lucas felt a surge of relief. The cabin was still standing, a small A-frame structure with peeling green paint and a lopsided porch. It looked abandoned, which was exactly what they needed. "Home sweet home," Lucas said, pulling the spare key from above the doorframe where Danny always left it. Inside, the cabin was cold and musty, but intact. One large room served as kitchen, living area, and dining space with a wood stove in the corner and mismatched furniture that had seen better decades. A ladder led to a sleeping loft, and a tiny bathroom was tucked under the stairs. "It's perfect," Olivia said, and she actually meant it. They spent the rest of the afternoon getting settled. Lucas got the wood stove going while Olivia inventoried their supplies and tested the water. The cell service was indeed terrible. 1 bar if you stood in exactly the right spot by the south window, but the burner phone worked well enough to send a text. As the sun set behind the mountains, painting the cabin in warm orange light, they sat together on the worn couch, eating sandwiches and instant soup heated on the wood stove. "Thank you," Olivia said quietly, "for all of this. For believing me, for helping me, for everything." Lucas met her eyes across the dim cabin. "That's what friends are for, Liv. Besides, you do the same for me." In a heartbeat, they sat in comfortable silence, listening to the fire crackle and the wind move through the pine trees outside. For the first time since Olivia had shown up in his parking lot, Lucas felt like they might actually survive this. He had no idea how wrong he was. The first night at the cabin passed without incident, though neither of them slept well. Lucas had insisted Olivia take the loft while he made do with the sagging couch downstairs, his baseball bat propped against the armrest within easy reach. Every creak of the old wood, every rustle of wind through the pines had him jerking awake, heart pounding, hand reaching for the weapon he hoped he'd never need to use. When dawn finally crept through the dusty windows, he found Olivia already awake, sitting at the small table with the flash drive in front of her, staring at it like it might suddenly combust. "How long have you been up?" Lucas asked, his voice rough with exhaustion. "I'm not sure I ever really slept." She looked up at him, dark circles under her eyes, making her look older than her 30 years. "I kept thinking about everything on this drive. All the lives Adrian's ruined with his fraud. The pension funds that invested in Voss Energy based on falsified reports. The employees who'll lose their jobs when this comes out. The communities that trusted him to deliver clean energy and got exploited instead." Lucas moved to the wood stove and added more logs, trying to coax some warmth back into the cold cabin. "None of that's your fault, Liv. Isn't it? I was the CFO. I signed off on quarterly reports without digging deep enough. I trusted the numbers my team gave me without verifying them myself. I was so focused on climbing the ladder, on proving I belonged in that position, that I missed what was happening right under my nose for years. You also exposed it. That counts for something. Olivia laughed bitterly. Does it? Right now, Adrian's still free, still rich, still powerful. I'm the one hiding in a cabin in the woods like a criminal. Where's the justice in that? Lucas didn't have an answer. He poured water into the dented kettle they'd found in the kitchen and set it on the stove to heat. Instant coffee was going to have to suffice until they could risk a supply run to civilization. We'll try calling Sarah again today, he said instead. Maybe her office can get a message to her in D.C. Tell her it's urgent. Maybe. Olivia didn't sound convinced. They spent the morning in tense waiting, taking turns standing by the south window with the burner phone, trying to get enough signal to make a call. Around 11, Olivia finally got through to Sarah Mendoza's office, but the assistant's message was the same. The prosecutor was in back-to-back hearings and wouldn't be available until she returned to Seattle on Monday. 4 more days, Olivia said, ending the call with barely controlled frustration. 4 more days of hiding while Adrian consolidates his story and turns me into the villain. Lucas was about to respond when his own phone buzzed in his pocket. His real phone, which he'd been keeping off to avoid being tracked. He'd turned it on briefly to check for any emergencies with Maya. What he saw made his blood run cold. 7 missed calls from Jennifer, 3 voicemails, a string of increasingly frantic text messages. The most recent one, sent 15 minutes ago, Lucas, call me now. 2 men came to my house asking about you and Olivia. They said they're private investigators, but something feels wrong. I told them I don't know anything, but they're still sitting outside in their car. I'm scared. Call me. We have a problem, Lucas said, his voice tight. Olivia crossed to him immediately, reading the messages over his shoulder. Her face went pale. They found Jennifer. They're using her to get to you. I have to call her back. Lucas, if they're monitoring her phone, I don't care. He was already dialing, his hands shaking with a mixture of fear and rage. They threatened my daughter's mother. That crosses every line. Jennifer answered on the first ring. Lucas, thank God. Where are you? Are you and Maya safe? We're inside. I locked all the doors. But these men, Lucas, they're not normal investigators. One of them showed me a photo of Olivia and asked if I'd seen her with you. When I said no, he smiled at me like he didn't believe me and said they'd wait. They've been out there for over an hour. Lucas's grip on the phone tightened until his knuckles went white. Listen to me very carefully. Call 911. Tell them there are suspicious men loitering outside your house and you feel threatened. Make it official. Get it on record. What's going on? Why are these people looking for Olivia? Lucas, what have you gotten yourself into? I can't explain right now. Just call the police and don't tell those men anything. I mean it, Jen. Nothing about me. Nothing about where I might be. Nothing. You're scaring me. Good. Be scared. Be careful. And keep Maya inside until those men are gone. He ended the call before she could ask more questions, then immediately turned off the phone and removed the battery. It was probably too late. If Adrian's people were sophisticated enough, they could have triangulated his location from that one call, but it was better than leaving it on like a beacon. Olivia was pacing the cabin's small floor space, her arms wrapped around herself. This is exactly what I was afraid of. Adrian's expanding his reach, putting pressure on everyone connected to you. Next, it'll be your friends, your coworkers, anyone who might know where you'd hide me. Then we move up the timeline. We can't wait until Monday. What choice do we have? Sarah's the only federal prosecutor I trust, and she's unreachable. Lucas's mind raced through possibilities, each one more desperate than the last. What about the media? If we leak this to a journalist, someone with enough credibility that Adrian can't just discredit them, Adrian owns half the media in this state through advertising contracts and shell companies. Any journalist who tried to publish this would find their editor killing the story before it went to print. Olivia stopped pacing and faced him. The only way this works is through official channels. Federal prosecutors, FBI, someone with the authority and independence to act on this evidence without being influenced by Adrian's money. So we're stuck. We're stuck. The weight of their situation settled over the cabin like a physical presence. Outside, a light rain had started to fall, pattering against the roof and windows. Lucas watched drops slide down the glass and thought about Jennifer and Maya, trapped in their house with Adrian's men watching from the street. The rage he'd felt earlier transformed into something colder, harder. "Tell me about Adrian Voss," he said suddenly. "Not the public persona, the real man. You worked with him for 6 years. What's he actually like?" Olivia considered the question, moving to sit at the table again. "Brilliant, charismatic, completely amoral." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "When I first started at Voss Energy, I admired him. He had this vision for renewable energy, for building a company that would transform the Pacific Northwest power infrastructure. He could make you believe in that vision so completely that you'd work 80-hour weeks and feel grateful for the opportunity." "When did you realize it was all fake?" "It wasn't all fake. That's what made it so insidious." Olivia's fingers traced patterns on the worn table surface. "Adrian does believe in renewable energy, but only because it's profitable. The fraud started small, padding a few contracts here, inflating some projections there. Just enough to keep investors happy and stock prices climbing. But once you start down that path, it's almost impossible to stop. The lies compound. You need bigger frauds to cover the smaller ones. Eventually, the whole thing becomes a house of cards that only stays standing through constant manipulation. How much is he actually worth? On paper, 3.2 billion. In reality, maybe a tenth of that if you strip away all the inflated valuations and phantom assets." She looked at Lucas. "That's why he can't let this evidence go public. It wouldn't just destroy his reputation. It would prove he's been lying about his net worth for years. Every bank loan, every investor agreement, every contract is based on fraudulent financial statements. He'd lose everything and spend the rest of his life in federal prison." Lucas absorbed this. "So he's desperate. Desperate men with billions of dollars at their disposal are the most dangerous kind. They have resources, connections, and absolutely nothing left to lose." As if to punctuate her point, Lucas's disconnected phone buzzed with a notification. He'd removed the battery, so it should have been impossible. Then he realized it was the burner phone, which Olivia had left on the table. A text message from an unknown number. "Mr. Hayes, we need to talk about your friend. Check your email." Lucas and Olivia stared at the phone like it was a snake. "How did they get this number?" Olivia whispered. "We just bought it yesterday. The only person who has it is Sarah's office." "Maybe they're bluffing. Maybe they're just sending messages to every number associated with me, hoping one connects." But even as he said it, Lucas knew it wasn't true. This was too specific, too targeted. Someone had tracked them to the burner phone, which meant someone very sophisticated was looking for them. Against his better judgment, Lucas powered up his real phone and checked his email. There was one new message, sent 10 minutes ago, from an address he didn't recognize. No subject line. He opened it. The email contained a single photograph and a short message. The photograph showed Jennifer's house from across the street, the same view Adrian's men would have from their surveillance car. But it had been taken at night, which meant these weren't pictures from today. This was from yesterday or earlier. They'd been watching Jennifer's house even before they'd made their presence known. The message was brief. "Your daughter is beautiful. It would be unfortunate if this situation affected her well-being. Convince Ms. Carter to return Mr. Voss's property, and everyone can go back to their normal lives. You have 24 hours. Further instructions to follow." Lucas felt something break inside him, the rage he'd been holding back, the fear he'd been managing, the desperate need to protect the people he loved. It all crystallized into a single, burning certainty. These people had threatened his daughter. "I'm going to kill him," Lucas said quietly. "I'm going to find Adrian Voss, and I'm going to kill him." "Lucas, no. They threatened Maya." His voice was shaking now, all the carefully maintained calm shattering. "They sent me a picture of my daughter's house. They're saying if we don't give them the flash drive, they'll hurt her." Olivia grabbed his arm. "Which is exactly why we can't give them what they want. The moment we hand over that evidence, we lose all our leverage. Adrian will kill us both and make it look like an accident. The only thing keeping us alive right now is that he doesn't have this flash drive. And the only thing keeping Maya safe is that I do whatever these people want. No. The only thing keeping Maya safe is that we get this evidence to the authorities before Adrian can act. Olivia's grip tightened. Lucas, listen to me. I know you're scared. I'm terrified too. But if we panic now, if we make emotional decisions, we all lose. Adrian's counting on you to choose your daughter over everything else. That's what makes you predictable, controllable. Lucas wanted to argue, wanted to shake her off, and drive straight to Jennifer's house and dare Adrian's men to try something. But the rational part of his brain, the part that had kept him alive through years of poverty and struggle, knew Olivia was right. Then what do we do? He asked, his voice raw. We move up our timeline anyway. We can't wait for Sarah Mendoza. Olivia was already moving, grabbing the flash drive and the burner phone. There's another option, the FBI field office in Seattle. We walk in, we hand them the evidence, we tell them everything. They'll have to act on it. And if Adrian has connections there too? Then we go to the media anyway. Not local media, national. The New York Times, Washington Post, someone big enough that even Adrian can't suppress the story. We make copies of everything on this drive and send it to every major outlet simultaneously. Even if he gets to some of them, he can't get to all of them. But Lucas thought through the plan, looking for holes. That puts us in Seattle, out in the open. Adrian's people will be watching the FBI building, watching every newspaper office. So we don't go during the day. We go tonight, late, when they won't expect it. We make the drive down, we deliver the evidence, and we disappear until the story breaks. With what car? My Civic's registration is in the system. The moment we hit a traffic camera or a toll booth, they'll know where we are. Olivia went still, then a slow smile crossed her face. Your cousin Danny, the one who owns this cabin, does he keep a car up here? Lucas mentally reviewed the last time he'd been to the cabin during summer. Yeah, an old pickup truck. He leaves it here for hauling firewood and supplies. It's probably in the shed out back. Think it runs? Only one way to find out. They pulled on their coats and headed out into the rain. The shed behind the cabin was barely more than 3 walls and a roof, open to the elements on one side. Inside, covered in a tarp and a thick layer of dust, was a 1990s Ford F-150 in faded blue paint. Lucas pulled off the tarp and climbed into the cab. The keys were in the ignition. Danny had always been trusting to the point of recklessness. Lucas said a silent prayer to any deity that might be listening, then turned the key. The engine coughed, sputtered, and died. He tried again. Same result. Come on, Lucas muttered, pumping the gas pedal. Don't do this to me. On the third try, the engine caught and roared to life, loud and rough, but running. Black smoke poured from the exhaust, but it was running. We have a vehicle, Lucas called out to Olivia, who was watching from the shed entrance. Then we have a plan. She was soaking wet now, her hair plastered to her face, but she looked more alive than she had since arriving at his apartment. Having a concrete plan of action, something to do instead of just hiding and waiting, had restored some of her natural fire. We leave as soon as it gets dark. 3-hour drive to Seattle, straight to the FBI field office. We hand them everything, and we don't leave until they've taken our statements and secured the evidence. Lucas checked the fuel gauge. Half a tank. Enough to get them to Seattle with some to spare. And if the FBI won't act immediately, then we walk across the street to the Seattle Times building and we hand them a copy too. We make enough noise that Adrian can't silence all of it. Olivia climbed into the passenger seat, rainwater dripping onto the worn upholstery. One way or another, this ends tonight. They spent the afternoon preparing. Lucas checked the truck thoroughly, testing the brakes, the lights, the windshield wipers. Everything worked, more or less. The vehicle was old and rough, but it was reliable in the way only truly basic machinery could be. No computers to track, no GPS to monitor. Just metal, rubber, and combustion. Olivia used the burner phone to research the FBI's Seattle field office, memorizing the address and planning their route. She also drafted a brief statement summarizing the fraud at Voss Energy, something she could hand to investigators along with the flash drive to give them context. As the sun began its descent behind the mountains, painting the cabin in long shadows, they loaded their minimal supplies into the truck. Lucas tucked the baseball bat behind the driver's seat, then hesitated and grabbed it again. "What are you doing?" Olivia asked. "Insurance." He carried the bat to the cabin and found a plastic bag in the kitchen. He wrapped the flash drive carefully, then went outside and buried it in the woods about 50 yards from the cabin, marking the spot with a distinctive rock formation he'd remember. When he came back, Olivia was staring at him. "You buried the evidence?" "A copy of the evidence. You're carrying the original. But if something happens, if we get separated or caught, or worse, I want to know there's a backup that Adrian's people can't find. Something we can retrieve later if we need to." Olivia nodded slowly. "That's actually smart. I have my moments." They ate a quick meal as darkness fell, canned soup and crackers, nothing that required much preparation. Neither of them had much appetite anyway. The cabin felt both too small and too exposed, a temporary shelter that had served its purpose but couldn't protect them anymore. At 8 o'clock, with full darkness settled over the mountains and rain still falling steadily, they locked up the cabin and climbed into the truck. "You ready for this?" Lucas asked, hand on the key. "No." Olivia's honesty was almost funny. "But we're doing it anyway." Lucas started the engine and pulled out onto the dirt road, headlights cutting through the rain and darkness. The truck's suspension was shot, making every bump and pothole feel like a small earthquake, but it moved forward steadily. They were 20 minutes down the mountain, just reaching the highway, when Lucas noticed the headlights behind them. At first, he told himself it was just another car heading to the interstate. This was a public road, after all. Other people used it. But the headlights stayed exactly the same distance behind them, matching their speed, never trying to pass even on straight stretches where it would have been easy. "Don't look back," Lucas said quietly, "but I think we have a tail." Olivia's reflection in the passenger window went rigid. "Are you sure?" "Not yet." Lucas maintained his speed, watching the mirror. "Let's see what they do when we hit the highway." 5 minutes later, they merged onto the main road heading west towards Seattle. The headlights merged right behind them. Lucas accelerated slightly. The headlights matched. He slowed down. So did they. "It's them," Olivia said, her voice tight. "How did they find us?" "I don't know." Lucas's mind raced. Had they been followed from Seattle somehow? Had Adrian's people tracked the burner phone after all? Or had they simply staked out every route off the mountain, waiting for anyone matching their description to make a run for it? The why didn't matter now. What mattered was that they were being followed, and somewhere ahead in the darkness, Adrian Voss's people were likely waiting to stop them from reaching the FBI. "What do we do?" Olivia asked. Lucas checked the mirrors again. Just one car behind them, which was either very good or very bad. Good if it meant they only had one tail to shake. Bad if it meant others were ahead, boxing them in. "We run," Lucas said, and pressed the accelerator to the floor. The old Ford's engine roared in protest, but the speedometer climbed. 60, 70, 80. The truck wasn't built for speed, and it shook violently at anything over 75, but Lucas kept pushing. Behind them, the headlights grew brighter as the trailing car accelerated to match. "Lucas, this is insane!" Olivia braced herself against the dashboard as the truck bounced through a rough patch. "This truck can barely handle 50. Then we better hope whoever's following us is even worse at high-speed chases than I am." The highway stretched ahead, mostly empty at this hour. Rain reduced visibility to maybe 50 yards in the truck's weak headlights. Lucas took the next curve too fast and felt the rear wheels slip before catching again. Behind them, the pursuing car was closing the distance. It was some kind of sedan, dark-colored, with much better handling than the ancient pickup. In seconds, it would be right on their bumper. Lucas saw the exit sign flash past. Snoqualmie Pass, half a mile. He made a split-second decision. "Hold on!" He yanked the wheel right, cutting across 2 lanes to make the exit at the last possible moment. Tires screamed. The truck tilted dangerously. For one horrible second, Lucas thought they were going to roll. Then they hit the exit ramp, still upright, still moving. He glanced in the mirror and saw the sedan shoot past on the highway, unable to make the same maneuver at that speed. "Oh my God," Olivia gasped. "Oh my God, I can't believe that worked." "Don't celebrate yet." Lucas navigated the surface streets of Snoqualmie Pass, a small mountain town that was mostly closed at this hour. "They'll turn around. We've got maybe 2 minutes before they find us again." "Where are we going?" "I have no idea." He turned randomly, trying to put distance and obstacles between them and their pursuers. Left, then right, then left again. The truck's engine was making concerning noises, and the temperature gauge was climbing toward the red. They ended up in a residential area. dark houses on either side. Lucas killed the headlights and pulled into the driveway of a house that looked unoccupied. No cars, no lights, newspapers piling up on the porch. They sat in darkness, engine ticking as it cooled, both of them breathing hard. "They know we're trying to reach the FBI," Olivia said. "That's the only way they could have been waiting on that road. They're not just tracking us, they're predicting our moves." Lucas's hands were still gripping the steering wheel hard enough to hurt. Maybe they're tracking the burner phone after all, or maybe they have people watching every route between here and Seattle. Either way, we can't make it to the FBI tonight. Not in this truck, not with them actively hunting us. So what's the alternative? We can't go back to the cabin. We can't stay here. And we can't just drive in circles until we run out of gas. Olivia was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Then she pulled out the burner phone and stared at it. "What are you doing?" Lucas asked. "Calling someone who might actually be able to help us. Someone Adrian doesn't know about." "Who?" "My brother." Lucas blinked in surprise. "Ethan? I thought you two weren't speaking." "We're not. Haven't been for 3 years. Not since our fight about Mom's estate." Olivia's finger hovered over the phone. "But Ethan's a defense attorney. He knows people, has connections outside Adrian's network. And more importantly, he's one of the few people in my life that Adrian Voss has no reason to be monitoring." "Will he even answer?" "Only one way to find out." She dialed, and Lucas listened as the phone rang once, twice, 3 times. He was certain it would go to voicemail when a male voice answered, cautious and surprised. "Hello?" "Ethan, it's Olivia. I need your help." There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and Lucas could practically hear Ethan Carter processing the fact that his estranged sister was calling him out of nowhere. When he finally spoke again, his voice had shifted from cautious to guarded. "Olivia, what's going on? It's almost midnight." "I know what time it is. I wouldn't be calling if it wasn't an emergency." Olivia's voice was steady, but Lucas could see her hand shaking as she held the phone. "I'm in serious trouble, Ethan. The kind that involves federal crimes and people who want me dead." Another pause, longer this time. "Is this some kind of joke? Because if you're calling me after 3 years of silence to play games, I uncovered fraud at Voss Energy. Massive, systematic fraud. When I tried to report it, my CEO turned the entire company against me and sent people to intimidate me into silence. Now I'm running with evidence that could send him to prison for the rest of his life. And he's got private security hunting me down." The words came out in a rush, desperate and raw. "I know we haven't spoken. I know you have every right to hang up on me, but I'm begging you, Ethan. I need help, and I have nowhere else to turn." Lucas heard muffled sounds on the other end, like Ethan was moving to a different room. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter, more serious. "Where are you right now?" "Snoqualmie Pass. We're hiding in someone's driveway because the people following us forced us off the highway." "We? Who's with you?" Olivia glanced at Lucas. "Lucas Hayes. You met him once at my graduation. He's been helping me stay alive for the past 2 days." "The rideshare driver?" Ethan's tone suggested he remembered Lucas and wasn't particularly impressed. "Olivia, what have you gotten yourself into?" "Something way over my head. But the evidence I have is solid, Ethan. Hundreds of millions in documented fraud. If I can get it to the right people, Adrian Voss goes down and a lot of innocent investors and employees get justice. But I need to survive long enough to make that happen." There was a long exhale on the other end. Okay. Listen to me. Don't move from where you are right now. Don't use that phone again after this call. I'm going to make some calls of my own, and then I'm coming to get you. Give me your exact location." Olivia described the street and the house number as best she could in the darkness. Ethan acknowledged the information with a curt, "Got it." And then his voice softened just slightly. "I still think you were wrong about Mom's estate, but you're my sister, and I'm not letting anyone hurt you. Stay put. I'll be there in 90 minutes. The line went dead. Olivia lowered the phone slowly, staring at it like she couldn't quite believe what had just happened. "He's coming." "I heard." Lucas shifted in the driver's seat, trying to ease the tension in his shoulders. "You really think we can trust him? You two have been on the outs for years." "Ethan and I fought about money and inheritance and who got what from our mother's will. We said terrible things to each other." Olivia's voice was quiet. But underneath all that anger, he's still my brother, and he's a damn good lawyer. If anyone can navigate us through this mess safely, it's him. Lucas nodded, though he wasn't entirely convinced. In his experience, family loyalty was complicated, especially when money and old wounds were involved. But they didn't have many options left, and sitting in a stranger's driveway in a stolen truck wasn't a sustainable plan. They waited in tense silence, watching the street for any sign of the sedan that had chased them off the highway. Every set of headlights that passed made Lucas's hand drift toward the baseball bat behind his seat. Every distant engine sound could have been Adrian's people closing in. At one point, Olivia spoke into the darkness. "Tell me about Maya. What's she like?" The question caught Lucas off guard. "Why do you want to know?" "Because I'm sitting here thinking about all the ways this could go wrong, and I need to remember why we're doing this. You're risking your relationship with your daughter to help me. The least I can do is understand who she is." Lucas felt something loosen in his chest. "She's stubborn. Gets that from her mother. Smart as hell. Gets that from her mother, too. She loves Moana, wants to be an ocean explorer when she grows up. Last week she told me she's going to build a submarine out of cardboard boxes and take me to see the mermaids." Olivia smiled in the darkness. "Sounds like she has your imagination." "Maybe, but she's better than me in every way that counts. Braver, kinder. When I pick her up from preschool, she always makes sure to say goodbye to every single kid in her class, even the ones who aren't nice to her. She doesn't understand why anyone would want to exclude someone or make them feel bad." Lucas's throat tightened. "The world's going to teach her those lessons eventually, and I hate that. I hate that I can't protect her from finding out how cruel people can be." "You're protecting her now. By making sure people like Adrian Voss face consequences for their actions, you're making the world a little bit safer for her." "Am I? Or am I just putting her in more danger?" Olivia turned to look at him, her face barely visible in the dim glow from the dashboard. "Lucas, if you want to back out, I understand. You've already done more than anyone could ask. You can drop me somewhere safe and go back to your life. Jennifer and Maya need you, and I have no right to—" "I'm not backing out." Lucas's voice was firm. "I'm scared, yeah. Terrified, actually. But I'm not leaving you to face this alone. We started this together, we finish it together." Before Olivia could respond, headlights swept across the driveway. Both of them tensed, Lucas's hand closing around the bat. But it was just a car passing on the street. Not the sedan, not Adrian's people. Just someone heading home after a late shift, completely unaware that two fugitives were hiding in their neighbor's driveway. The minutes crawled past with agonizing slowness. Lucas checked his watch compulsively. 60 minutes since Ethan's call. 70? 80. The rain had slowed to a light drizzle and the temperature was dropping. Lucas could see his breath in the cab of the truck. At 93 minutes, a black Range Rover pulled into the driveway behind them, headlights illuminating the truck's interior. Lucas had the bat in his hand before he even thought about it, but Olivia grabbed his arm. "It's him. That's Ethan's car." A man got out of the Range Rover, tall and lean, wearing an expensive raincoat and wire-rimmed glasses. Even in the dark, Lucas could see the family resemblance. Same sharp cheekbones, same intense eyes, same way of carrying himself like he owned whatever space he occupied. Ethan Carter walked to the driver's side window and waited for Lucas to roll it down. "You must be Lucas." His voice was clipped, professional. "I'm Ethan. We need to move quickly. Follow me." "Where are we going?" Lucas asked. "Somewhere safe. I'll explain when we get there. But right now, every second you spend in that truck increases your chances of being found. So either trust me or don't, but decide fast." Lucas looked at Olivia, who nodded. "We trust him." "Okay then." Lucas started the truck, which coughed to life with a sound like it was dying. "Lead the way." Ethan returned to his Range Rover and pulled out of the driveway. Lucas followed, keeping the battered truck close. They wound through Snoqualmie Pass's residential streets, then got back on the highway heading west, but only for a few exits before turning north onto smaller roads. After 20 minutes of driving through increasingly rural areas, Ethan turned onto a private drive marked only by a stone pillar. The road wound through dense forest for almost a mile before opening onto a clearing where a modern glass and timber house sat overlooking a small lake. Even in the darkness, Lucas could tell the place was expensive. Not mansion-level wealth, but the kind of carefully designed mountain retreat that probably cost more than Lucas would make in a lifetime. Ethan parked near the house and got out, gesturing for them to follow. Lucas killed the truck's engine and grabbed his baseball bat, then helped Olivia out of the passenger side. Her legs were stiff from the tense drive, and she stumbled slightly. Lucas caught her elbow, steadying her. "This is my weekend place," Ethan said, unlocking the front door. "I bought it 2 years ago for when I need to get away from the city. No one except my assistant knows about it, and she's in Europe for the next week. You'll be safe here." The interior was exactly what Lucas expected. High ceilings, minimalist furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake. Everything was clean, organized, expensive, the kind of place where Lucas felt like he should take off his shoes before stepping on the hardwood floors. Ethan led them to a living room dominated by a stone fireplace and gestured for them to sit on a leather couch that probably cost more than Lucas's car. "Okay," Ethan said, remaining standing. "I need to hear everything. Start from the beginning and don't leave anything out." Olivia told the story while Lucas sat beside her, occasionally adding details. Ethan listened without interrupting, his lawyer's face revealing nothing. When Olivia got to the part about the flash drive and the evidence it contained, he held out his hand. "Let me see it." Olivia hesitated for just a moment, then pulled the flash drive from her pocket and handed it over. Ethan plugged it into his laptop and spent the next 20 minutes reviewing files in silence. His expression never changed, but Lucas saw his jaw tighten as he clicked through spreadsheets and documents. Finally, Ethan closed the laptop and looked at his sister. "This is legitimate?" "Every transaction documented. Every falsified report matched against the real accounts. It's ironclad." "Adrian Voss is going to prison for a very long time." Ethan's voice was almost admiring. "This is the kind of case that federal prosecutors dream about. Clear documentation, obvious intent, massive scale. The U.S. Attorney's Office will fight each other for the chance to try this." "So you believe me?" Olivia asked quietly. "I believe the evidence, and I believe that Adrian Voss is desperate enough to do whatever it takes to prevent this from going public." Ethan removed the flash drive and handed it back to her. "Which brings us to the immediate problem. You can't walk into the FBI field office in Seattle. Voss will have people watching every federal building in the state." "What about the media?" Lucas suggested. Olivia mentioned going to national newspapers. Ethan shook his head. "Too slow and too risky. By the time a journalist verifies the story and gets it past legal review, Voss will have time to muddy the waters, discredit Olivia, maybe even get a court order blocking publication. We need something faster and more direct." "What do you suggest?" Olivia asked. Ethan sat down in an armchair across from them, steepling his fingers. "I have a contact in the U.S. Attorney's Office. Not Sarah Mendoza, someone else, someone who specializes in emergency protective orders and witness security. Her name is Patricia Volkov, and she's built a career on cases exactly like this. Corporate whistleblowers, organized crime informants, people who need immediate protection in exchange for testimony." "Can you reach her tonight?" "I already did. While I was driving to pick you up, I called her personal cell. Explained the situation in general terms without naming names. She's interested, very interested, but she needs to see the evidence before she can move forward with any kind of protection deal." Lucas felt a flicker of hope for the first time in hours. "So we meet with her, hand over the evidence, and she puts Olivia in witness protection?" "It's more complicated than that," Ethan said. "Patricia will want to verify everything before committing federal resources. That means bringing in forensic accountants, getting sworn statements, possibly arranging a grand jury testimony. The process could take days or even weeks, and during that time you'll both need to stay hidden and alive." "Weeks?" Olivia's voice cracked. "Ethan, I can't hide for weeks. Adrian's people already threatened Lucas's daughter. The longer this drags on, the more people get hurt." "Then we accelerate the timeline." Ethan pulled out his phone. "I'm going to call Patricia back right now and arrange a meeting for tomorrow morning. Early, before Voss's people have time to mobilize. We'll meet somewhere neutral, somewhere public enough that an attack would be impossible, but private enough for confidential discussions." "Where?" Lucas asked. "The federal courthouse in Tacoma. It's 40 minutes south of Seattle, has security screening at every entrance, and Patricia has an office there. We go in through the employee entrance at 6 a.m. before normal business hours. By the time anyone realizes where you are, you'll already be under federal protection." Olivia looked at Lucas, and he could see the exhaustion and hope warring in her expression. "What do you think?" "I think it's the best option we've got." Lucas turned to Ethan. "But what about Jennifer and Maya? Adrian's people are watching Jennifer's house. If they think we're about to expose everything, they might escalate." Ethan nodded. "I can arrange police protection for Jennifer. I have contacts in the Tacoma and Seattle police departments who owe me favors. I'll make some calls tonight, have officers posted outside her house starting first thing in the morning. Official presence, marked cars, the whole thing. Voss's people won't try anything with cops watching." "You can really do that?" Lucas asked, skeptical. "I defended 3 Seattle police officers last year on excessive force charges and got all 3 acquitted. Trust me, they'll take my calls." Ethan was already dialing. "Make yourselves comfortable. There's food in the kitchen, bedrooms upstairs. I need to make about a dozen phone calls, and you both look like you haven't slept properly in days." He was right. Lucas felt the exhaustion settling into his bones now that they'd stopped running, stopped hiding, stopped making desperate plans in the dark. Olivia looked even worse, her face pale and drawn in the harsh living room light. "Come on," Lucas said, touching her arm gently. "Let's find something to eat." The kitchen was immaculate and well-stocked. Lucas found bread, cheese, and some deli meat in the refrigerator and threw together sandwiches while Olivia sat at the kitchen island, staring at nothing. "We're going to make it," Lucas said, setting a plate in front of her. "Tomorrow morning, we hand everything over to the feds, and this nightmare ends." "Does it?" Olivia picked at the sandwich without eating. "Even if Adrian goes to prison, even if the fraud gets exposed, my career's over. No company will ever hire me again. I'll be the CFO who brought down a multi-billion-dollar corporation, the whistleblower who destroyed thousands of jobs. You'll be the person who told the truth. That counts for something." "Maybe, but truth doesn't pay rent or rebuild a reputation." She finally took a bite, chewing mechanically. "What about you? After all this is over, what happens to Lucas Hayes, rideshare driver turned fugitive?" Lucas had been trying not to think about that question. "I go back to my life, I guess. Pick up my shifts, split custody with Jennifer, try to explain to Maya why Daddy had to help a friend and couldn't see her for a while. You'll be a witness too. Once this goes to trial, Adrian's defense team will dig into every aspect of your life looking for ammunition. They'll paint you as some kind of accomplice or opportunist who helped me fabricate evidence. Let them try. I've got nothing to hide except a maxed-out credit card and a string of parking tickets." Olivia smiled despite herself. "You're either very brave or very stupid." "Probably both." Lucas finished his sandwich and started cleaning up. "But I don't regret helping you, Liv. Even with everything that's happened, even with Maya being threatened and my life getting turned upside down. You needed help and I gave it. That's what friends do." She stood up and hugged him then, sudden and fierce. "Thank you for everything, for believing me, for protecting me, for not running when anyone with sense would have run." Lucas hugged her back, feeling the tremors still running through her body. "We're not out of this yet. Save the thank yous for when we're both safely on the other side." They found Ethan still on the phone in the living room, pacing in front of the fireplace. He'd built a fire at some point, and the flames cast dancing shadows across the expensive furniture. Lucas caught fragments of conversation, legal terms he didn't understand, names he didn't recognize, carefully worded requests that were clearly calling in favors. When Ethan finally ended his last call, it was almost 2 in the morning. "It's done," he announced. "Patricia Volkov will meet us at the Tacoma courthouse at 6 a.m. I've also arranged for police presence at Jennifer's house starting at 5:30. 2 patrol cars, minimum 4-hour shifts, rotating until further notice. And I called a private security firm I work with sometimes. They're sending a team to watch this house for the rest of the night, just in case Voss's people somehow track you here." Lucas felt some of the tension leave his shoulders. "You did all that in 2 hours?" "I'm very good at my job." Ethan's expression was neutral, but there was a hint of pride underneath. "Now, both of you need to sleep. We leave here at 5 a.m. sharp. That gives you 3 hours. The bedrooms are upstairs. Take your pick. There's spare clothes in the closets if you need them." Olivia stood, swaying slightly with exhaustion. "Ethan, I don't know how to thank you for this." "Start by surviving until morning. We can talk about gratitude later." He paused, then added quietly, "I'm still angry about our fight, Liv. I haven't forgiven you for what you said about me not caring about Mom's legacy." "But you're my sister. and I'll be damned if I let some corporate sociopath hurt you." "I'm sorry," Olivia whispered, "for what I said, for how I said it, for pushing you away when I should have—" "Later," Ethan interrupted, but his voice was gentler. "We'll have time for family drama after we keep you alive. Right now, go sleep." Lucas followed Olivia upstairs where they found 3 bedrooms, each one decorated with the same minimalist precision as the rest of the house. Olivia took the one overlooking the lake. Lucas chose the smaller room next door, too tired to appreciate the luxury of actual thread count and a mattress that didn't sag. He lay down fully clothed, the baseball bat on the floor beside the bed, and expected to fall asleep immediately. Instead, his mind raced. He thought about Maya, hopefully sleeping peacefully at Jennifer's house, unaware that police would be posted outside by morning. He thought about the meeting with Patricia Volkov, trying to imagine how it would go, what questions she'd ask, whether she'd really be able to protect them. He thought about Adrian Voss, a man he'd never met, but who'd managed to turn Lucas's entire world upside down in less than 3 days. What kind of person did it take to build a billion-dollar empire on lies? What kind of sociopath threatened a 4-year-old child to protect their fraud? Lucas must have dozed off eventually because he was startled awake by a hand on his shoulder. He grabbed for the bat before his eyes even opened, but it was just Ethan, standing beside the bed in the pre-dawn darkness. "Easy," Ethan said. "It's 4:30. We need to move." Lucas sat up, his body aching from the awkward position. "Everything okay?" "So far, security team hasn't reported any problems, but I want to be on the road before full daylight, just in case." Lucas found Olivia already awake in the hallway, wearing a borrowed sweater that was too big for her. She'd washed her face and pulled her hair back, and some of the haunted look had faded from her eyes. Sleep, even just a few hours, had helped. They gathered in the kitchen where Ethan had coffee waiting and protein bars laid out like a military operation. "Eat fast," he instructed. "We're taking my car. The truck stays here. I'll have someone dispose of it later." "Won't they track your car?" Lucas asked. "My car has legal plates, legal registration, and an expensive GPS jammer in the trunk that I use when I need to meet clients who value discretion. Anyone trying to follow us electronically will lose the signal the moment we leave this driveway." Ethan checked his watch. "Patricia is expecting us at 6. That gives us 90 minutes, which is more than enough if we leave now." They loaded into the Range Rover, Olivia in front with her brother, Lucas in the back seat. As they pulled away from the house, Lucas looked back and saw 2 men in dark jackets standing near the tree line, the security team Ethan had hired. They didn't wave or acknowledge the car, just watched with professional alertness. The drive to Tacoma was tense but uneventful. Ethan drove fast but not recklessly, taking back roads instead of the highway. The sun was just starting to lighten the eastern sky when they pulled into downtown Tacoma, the city still quiet in the early morning hour. The federal courthouse was an imposing concrete structure that took up an entire city block. Ethan drove past the main entrance and pulled around to a side street where a plain metal door was marked "Authorized Personnel Only." He parked and turned off the engine. "That's the employee entrance. Patricia will be waiting inside with a security escort. Once we go through those doors, you're under federal protection. But once we go through those doors, there's no turning back. Olivia, you'll have to give a full statement. Lucas, you'll be a material witness. Both of you will likely need to testify in court eventually. Your lives will never be completely private again." "I understand," Olivia said. "So do I," Lucas added. Ethan nodded. "Then let's end this." They got out of the car and walked toward the metal door. Ethan pressed an intercom button, and a voice crackled through the speaker. "Identification? Ethan Carter, attorney at law, with 2 clients for Patricia Volkov." There was a buzzing sound, and the door unlocked. They stepped into a small security vestibule where a federal officer in uniform waited with a metal detector wand. "I need everyone to empty their pockets and step through one at a time," the officer said. Lucas pulled out his wallet, keys, and phone. Olivia did the same, including the flash drive, which she held carefully. The officer waved them through without incident, then led them down a hallway to a bank of elevators. "Ms. Volkov is waiting on the 4th floor," he said. The elevator ride felt like it took forever. Lucas watched the numbers climb, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the doors opened onto a hallway lined with office doors. A woman stood waiting outside one of them. She was in her late 40s with iron gray hair pulled into a severe bun and the kind of sharp eyes that missed nothing. She wore a dark suit and low heels, and she radiated authority. "Ethan," she said, shaking his hand, "good to see you again." "Patricia, thank you for meeting us on such short notice. This is my sister, Olivia Carter, and her friend, Lucas Hayes." Patricia Volkov's gaze swept over both of them, assessing. "Come into my office. We have a lot to discuss." The office was small but functional, with a desk, several chairs, and walls lined with law books and case files. Patricia closed the door behind them and gestured for everyone to sit. "Before we go any further, I need to establish some ground rules," she said, settling behind her desk. "Anything you tell me in this room is protected by attorney-client privilege, but only if you're completely honest. If I find out you've lied to me or withheld information, our agreement ends immediately and you're on your own. Understood?" "Understood," Olivia said. "Good. Now, Ethan gave me the broad strokes over the phone, but I need details. Start from the beginning and tell me everything." For the third time in as many days, Olivia told the story. But this time, Patricia interrupted frequently, asking pointed questions about dates, amounts, specific transactions. She took notes in a leather-bound notebook, her handwriting quick and precise. When Olivia finished, Patricia held out her hand. "The evidence." Olivia gave her the flash drive. Patricia plugged it into her computer and spent several minutes reviewing files, her expression unchanging. Lucas felt his heart pounding as the seconds ticked past. Finally, Patricia looked up. "This is substantial. If even half of what's documented here holds up under forensic review, Adrian Voss is looking at 20 to 30 years in federal prison." "So you'll help us?" Olivia asked. "I'll do better than that. I'm going to recommend you for immediate witness protection and prepare an emergency briefing for the U.S. Attorney. By end of business today, we'll have a team of agents securing this evidence and building a case." Patricia's voice was firm, confident. "But I need both of you to understand what you're signing up for. This will be a long, difficult process. Voss will use every resource at his disposal to fight these charges. His lawyers will attack your credibility, your motives, every decision you've ever made. You'll be questioned, cross-examined, potentially threatened. Are you prepared for that?" "Yes," Olivia said without hesitation. Patricia turned to Lucas. "And you, Mr. Hayes? You have no legal obligation to be involved in this. You could walk away right now and go back to your life." Lucas thought about Maya, about Jennifer, about the quiet life he'd been living just days ago. He thought about how much easier it would be to just disappear, to let Olivia and Ethan and Patricia handle everything while he went back to driving strangers around Seattle. Then he thought about the picture Adrian's people had sent him, Maya's house photographed from across the street, the implicit threat, the casual cruelty. "I'm not walking away," Lucas said. "I'm seeing this through to the end." Patricia nodded approvingly. "Then welcome to the fight of your lives. Let's bring down a billionaire." Patricia Volkov made 5 phone calls in the next 20 minutes, each one more urgent than the last. Lucas sat beside Olivia in the cramped office, listening to half-conversations filled with legal terminology and jurisdictional protocols he barely understood. What he did understand was that Patricia was activating something big, calling in resources and people who clearly respected her authority. When she ended the final call, she turned back to them with the kind of focus that made Lucas feel like he was being X-rayed. "Here's what's going to happen. In approximately 45 minutes, a team of FBI forensic accountants will arrive to begin analyzing the evidence on this flash drive. Simultaneously, the U.S. Attorney himself will be briefed on the case. If everything checks out, and based on my preliminary review, it will, we'll be moving forward with arrest warrants by end of day." "That fast?" Olivia's voice was filled with disbelief. "Cases like this don't come along often, Ms. Carter. When we have documented evidence of fraud at this scale, with clear criminal intent, we move quickly before the perpetrators can destroy records or flee the country." Patricia leaned forward. "But here's the reality you need to understand. The moment those warrants are issued, Adrian Voss will know his world is collapsing, and desperate men with resources do desperate things. Which is why I'm arranging immediate protective custody for both of you." "What does that mean exactly?" Lucas asked. "It means federal marshals will transport you to a secure location where you'll remain until Voss is in custody, and we've neutralized any threat his associates might pose. You'll have no contact with the outside world except through approved channels. No phones, no internet, no visitors. Complete isolation." Lucas felt his stomach drop. For how long? Could be days. Could be weeks. It depends on how quickly we can locate and arrest Voss, and how cooperative his organization is once we start making arrests. Patricia's expression softened slightly. I know it's not ideal, but it's the only way to guarantee your safety. I have a daughter, Lucas said, trying to keep the desperation out of his voice. She's 4 years old. I can't just disappear for weeks without explaining where I am. Your daughter is already under police protection, correct? Patricia glanced at Ethan, who nodded. Then she's safer than she's been since this started. And once Voss is in custody, you'll be able to resume your normal life. But until that happens, any contact with family or friends creates a vulnerability that Voss's people can exploit. Olivia reached over and squeezed Lucas's hand. She's right. I hate it, but she's right. If Adrian's people think they can use Maya to get to us, they won't hesitate. Lucas wanted to argue, wanted to insist there had to be another way. But the logic was inescapable. Every phone call, every text message, every attempt to reach out to Jennifer or Maya would be a thread Adrian's people could pull. And he'd seen what they were capable of, the threats, the surveillance, the willingness to terrorize innocent people. Okay, he said quietly. I'll do whatever it takes to keep her safe. Patricia nodded approvingly. Good. Now, while we wait for the FBI team, I need both of you to write out detailed statements. Everything you remember, every interaction with Voss or his associates, every threat made, every piece of evidence you encountered. The more detail, the better. She provided them with legal pads and pens, and Lucas began the laborious process of documenting the past 72 hours. It was strange, seeing it all written out in chronological order. What had felt like a chaotic blur of fear and adrenaline became a structured narrative with clear cause and effect. Olivia showing up at his apartment, the police visit, the cabin, the chase on the highway, each event building on the previous one, each decision leading inevitably to this moment. He was halfway through describing their arrival at Ethan's lake house when the office door opened and 3 people walked in, 2 men in dark suits with FBI credentials clipped to their belts, and a woman in business attire carrying a laptop bag that looked heavy enough to contain serious computing power. Patricia, the older of the 2 men said, shaking her hand, you said this was urgent. Tom, meet Olivia Carter and Lucas Hayes. They've just handed us the biggest corporate fraud case since Enron. Patricia gestured to the flash drive still connected to her computer. Everything's on there. Bank records, falsified reports, email chains showing intent. It's a prosecutor's dream. The FBI agent Tom moved to the computer and began clicking through files, his expression growing more intense with each passing second. The woman with the laptop bag joined him, and they began speaking in low, rapid voices, pointing at the screen and taking notes. The younger FBI agent remained by the door, and Lucas noticed the bulge under his jacket that suggested he was armed. It was a stark reminder that despite the mundane setting, just an office with fluorescent lights and institutional furniture, they were in the middle of something dangerous. Ethan stood from where he'd been sitting against the wall. Patricia, I need to head back to Seattle. I have a court appearance at 10 that I can't miss. Will they be okay here? They're in federal custody now, safer than anywhere else in the state. Patricia walked him to the door. Thank you for bringing them in. You may have just saved your sister's life. Ethan looked back at Olivia, and for a moment, the sibling antagonism that had defined their relationship for years seemed to evaporate. Don't do anything stupid while I'm gone, and try not to get killed. I'm not ready to be an only child. I'll do my best. Olivia's voice was thick with emotion. Ethan, I meant what I said earlier. I'm sorry. For all of it. I know. We'll talk when this is over. Really talk. He glanced at Lucas. Take care of her. She's tougher than she looks, but she's also terrible at asking for help when she needs it. Runs in the family, apparently, Lucas said, managing a weak smile. After Ethan left, the office settled into a strange rhythm of intense activity and interminable waiting. Tom and his colleague pored over the evidence, occasionally calling Patricia over to clarify something or ask Olivia technical questions about Voss Energy's accounting practices. Lucas continued writing his statement, filling page after page with details he'd been too scared or too busy to process properly when they were actually happening. Around 9 in the morning, Patricia's phone rang. She answered, listened for a moment, then her expression changed to something Lucas couldn't quite read. satisfaction maybe, mixed with grim determination. Understood. We'll be ready. She ended the call and addressed the room. The U.S. Attorney has authorized arrest warrants for Adrian Voss and 7 other Voss Energy executives. FBI teams are being mobilized as we speak. With any luck, Voss will be in custody by this afternoon. Olivia let out a breath she seemed to have been holding for days. It's really happening. It's really happening, Patricia confirmed. But until those arrests are made, you're both still at risk. Tom, I want them moved to the safe house within the hour. Full security detail, no exceptions. Tom nodded and pulled out his phone, stepping into the hallway to make arrangements. Lucas finished his statement and handed it to Patricia, who scanned it quickly before adding it to a growing folder of documents. His hand was cramping from all the writing, and exhaustion was creeping back in despite the adrenaline that had been sustaining him. What happens after Voss is arrested? Olivia asked. Do we testify right away? There'll be an arraignment first, probably within 24 hours of arrest. Then preliminary hearings, motions, discovery. The actual trial could be months away, maybe longer if his lawyers try to drag things out. Patricia's expression was matter-of-fact, like she was describing a routine process rather than the dismantling of a billionaire's empire. But your testimony will be crucial. Voss's defense team will argue that the evidence was fabricated or misinterpreted. Having the CFO, who discovered the fraud, testify under oath will be devastating to his case. And what about witness protection? Lucas asked. Do we stay hidden until the trial? Not that long. Once Voss is in custody and we've rounded up his key associates, the immediate threat diminishes significantly. You'll probably spend a week or 2 in the safe house, then you can return home with some security precautions in place. Random check-ins, maybe a panic button system, but nothing too intrusive. The door opened again, and Tom returned. Transport's ready. We've got 2 cars, 4 agents. The safe house is 90 minutes from here. Rural location, fully secured. Patricia stood and addressed Olivia and Lucas directly. This is where I hand you off to the FBI, but I want you both to know that what you're doing takes real courage. Most people in your position would have taken Voss's bribe or stayed silent out of fear. You chose to fight back, and that matters. I just want this to be over, Olivia said quietly. It will be. Soon. Patricia shook both their hands. Tom will take good care of you, and I'll keep you updated on the investigation as it progresses. They followed Tom out of the office and down a different hallway than the one they'd entered through. Lucas felt increasingly disconnected from reality, like he was watching himself move through a procedural drama rather than living it. Federal marshals, safe houses, arrest warrants for billionaires, this wasn't supposed to be his life. He was just a guy who drove people around Seattle and tried to see his daughter every other week. Now he was a material witness in a massive fraud case, being escorted by armed FBI agents to an undisclosed location. The back exit of the courthouse opened onto a parking garage where 2 identical black SUVs waited with engines running. Tom directed Olivia into the first vehicle and Lucas into the second, and within minutes they were pulling out onto Tacoma's streets. Lucas watched the city pass by through tinted windows, trying to memorize landmarks in case he needed to find his way back somehow. But after a few turns, he lost track of where they were. The agent driving didn't speak, and the one in the passenger seat was busy monitoring something on a tablet. They drove north for a while, then east, then north again. The urban landscape gradually gave way to suburbs, then to increasingly rural roads lined with tall pines and cedar trees. The morning had turned gray and overcast, threatening rain again. Eventually, they turned onto a gravel road marked only by a number on a wooden post. The road wound upward through dense forest for several miles before opening onto a clearing where a large house sat surrounded by chain-link fencing topped with barbed wire. It looked more like a compound than a safe house. Security cameras were visible on every corner of the building, and Lucas counted at least 3 armed guards patrolling the perimeter. The SUVs pulled through a gate that closed immediately behind them, and they parked near the house's front entrance. Tom got out first, scanned the area with professional caution, then opened Lucas's door. "Welcome to your home for the next week or so," he said. "I know it looks intimidating, but trust me, you'll sleep better knowing you're this secure." Lucas climbed out and saw Olivia emerging from the other vehicle, looking around with wide eyes. The house itself was modern, but nondescript, 2 stories with minimal windows and what looked like reinforced doors. They were led inside to a large living area that had been set up like a comfortable prison. Couches, a television, bookshelves, a kitchen area with basic appliances. But no windows on the ground floor, and Lucas noticed the exits were all controlled by keypads. "You'll have separate bedrooms upstairs," Tom explained. "There's food in the kitchen, satellite TV with limited channels, some books and magazines. No phones, no computers, no outside communication unless it's approved by me personally. There are 4 agents on duty at all times, rotating in 8-hour shifts. If you need anything, just ask. If there's an emergency, hit the red button by any door and everyone comes running." "How will we know when Voss is arrested?" Olivia asked. "I'll tell you personally. Could be today, could be tomorrow. We're monitoring the situation in real time." Tom checked his watch. "Right now it's 10:30. The arrest teams are getting into position. With any luck, we'll have good news by dinner time." He left them alone in the living area, and Lucas heard the door lock click behind him. The sound was both reassuring and deeply unsettling. "Well," Olivia said, looking around at their accommodations, "this is definitely not how I imagined my week going." "You and me both." Lucas sat down heavily on one of the couches. Now that they'd stopped moving, stopped running, stopped making life or death decisions, he felt the full weight of exhaustion crashing over him. "I should probably call Jennifer, let her know I'm okay." Tom said no phone calls. "I know what he said, but Jennifer's probably losing her mind. She had strange men watching her house. Her ex-husband disappeared and she has no idea what's happening." Olivia sat down beside him. "Lucas, I get it. I really do. But if we break protocol now, after everything we've been through to get here safely, we're putting ourselves at risk. Just a few more hours. Wait until Voss is arrested, then ask Tom to arrange a supervised call." She was right, but that didn't make it easier. Lucas thought about Maya, probably asking Jennifer where Daddy was, why he hadn't called. 4 years old was too young to understand concepts like federal protection and corporate fraud. All Maya would know was that her father had promised to see her and then disappeared. The guilt was almost physical, a weight pressing down on his chest. They spent the rest of the morning in uncomfortable limbo. Olivia found a book on the shelves and tried to read, but gave up after staring at the same page for 10 minutes. Lucas attempted to watch television, but couldn't focus on anything. His mind kept circling back to the same questions. Had the FBI found Adrian Voss yet? Were Jennifer and Maya really safe? What would happen when this was all over and he tried to go back to his normal life? Around 2 in the afternoon, Tom returned with lunch. Sandwiches from a deli, bags of chips, bottled water. He ate with them in the living area, and Lucas noticed he kept checking his phone. "Any news?" Olivia asked. "The teams are in position, just waiting for the right moment." Tom took a bite of his sandwich, chewed thoughtfully. "Voss is a flight risk, so we're coordinating carefully. He has access to private planes, connections in countries without extradition treaties. We get one shot at this." "What if he runs?" Lucas asked. "What if he figures out what's happening and disappears? Then it becomes an international manhunt, and your stay here gets extended significantly." Tom's tone suggested this was not his preferred outcome. "But Patricia's good at her job. She'll have made sure Voss doesn't know we're coming until it's too late." The afternoon dragged on with excruciating slowness. Lucas tried to nap, but his mind wouldn't shut down. Olivia paced the living area like a caged animal, her nervous energy filling the space. Every time they heard footsteps in the hallway, they both looked up expectantly, hoping for news. Finally, at 6:17 in the evening, Tom burst through the door with his phone pressed to his ear and a grin on his face. "He's in custody," he announced. "Adrian Voss was arrested 40 minutes ago at his downtown Seattle office. Tried to make a run for his private parking garage, but we had agents waiting. He's being processed at the Federal Detention Center as we speak." Olivia's knees seemed to give out, and she sat down hard on the couch. "It's over. It's actually over." "Not quite," Tom cautioned. "We still need to round up his associates and secure all the evidence at Voss Energy headquarters. But the main threat is neutralized. Voss won't be going anywhere except a federal courtroom." Lucas felt a strange mixture of relief and anticlimax. After days of running, hiding, making desperate plans, it seemed almost too easy. A billionaire arrested in his own office building, just like any common criminal. "Can I call my daughter's mother?" Lucas asked. "Please, I need to let her know I'm safe." Tom considered for a moment, then nodded. Supervised call. 5 minutes. I'll dial the number and stay on the line. No details about your location or the case, just reassurance that you're okay. That's all I need. Tom used his phone to make the call, then handed it to Lucas. It rang 3 times before Jennifer answered, her voice tight with stress. Hello? Jen, it's Lucas. Lucas? Where the hell have you been? The police have been parked outside my house for 2 days. You haven't answered any of my calls, and Maya keeps crying because she thinks you forgot about her. The anger in Jennifer's voice was actually comforting, familiar in a way the past few days hadn't been. I know, and I'm so sorry. I can't explain everything right now, but I'm safe. And the reason for the police presence is resolved. They can leave now. Resolved? Lucas, what is going on? This has something to do with your friend Olivia, doesn't it? Yes. But it's complicated, and I promise I'll explain everything when I can. Right now, I just need you to know that I'm okay. Maya's safe, and I'll be able to see her again soon. There was a long pause. You scared me. When those men came to the house, when you disappeared, I thought something terrible had happened. I'm sorry. I never wanted to drag you and Maya into this, but it's over now. The person who was causing problems has been arrested. Arrested? Jennifer's voice rose. Lucas, what have you gotten yourself into? Nothing illegal, I promise. I was helping a friend and it got complicated, but I'm with federal agents and I'm safe. Tom tapped his watch, indicating time was running short. I have to go, Lucas said. But can you tell Maya that Daddy loves her and I'll see her very soon? Tell her I'm sorry I missed our time together. She'll be happy to hear from you. Jennifer's anger had softened into something closer to concern. Be careful, okay? Whatever this is, just be careful. I will. Thank you for understanding. Or trying to, anyway. Tom took the phone back before Jennifer could respond, ending the call efficiently. Lucas felt both better and worse, relieved that he'd made contact, but guilty about how much he couldn't explain. Thank you, he said to Tom. Don't mention it. I've got kids too. I know what it's like. Tom pocketed his phone. Now, I have good news and complicated news. The good news is that with Voss in custody, the immediate danger to both of you has decreased significantly. The complicated news is that we're still rounding up his associates, and until we're confident we've neutralized his entire organization, you need to stay here. How long? Olivia asked. Couple more days, probably. Maybe a week at the outside. We're moving fast on this because of the high-profile nature of the case. Every hour Voss spends in custody, more of his people are flipping and cooperating. It's like watching a house of cards collapse. If Lucas thought about spending another week in this comfortable prison, cut off from Maya and his life and everything normal. It seemed both impossibly long and like a small price to pay for staying alive. That night, lying in a small bedroom upstairs, Lucas stared at the ceiling and tried to process everything that had happened. Less than a week ago, his biggest concern had been making enough in tips to cover his electric bill. Now, he was a federal witness who'd helped bring down a billionaire. The world felt fundamentally different, like he'd crossed some threshold he couldn't uncross. Even after this was over, even after he went back to his apartment and his shifts and his custody arrangement with Jennifer, he'd never see things the same way again. He'd learned what it looked like when ordinary people stood up to power. And more importantly, he'd learned that sometimes, incredibly, the ordinary people won. The next 3 days passed in a blur of boredom punctuated by brief moments of information. Tom brought regular updates on the investigation. 7 executives arrested, files seized from Voss Energy headquarters, bank accounts frozen. Each piece of news felt like another nail in Adrian Voss's coffin. Olivia spent most of her time giving additional statements to federal prosecutors, clarifying technical details about the fraud schemes she'd uncovered. Lucas mostly waited, read books he found on the shelves, and tried not to think about how much he was missing Maya. On the 4th day, Patricia Volkov arrived at the safe house with news. Adrian Voss has been denied bail, she announced, sitting down across from Olivia and Lucas in the living area. The judge agreed he's a flight risk with resources to disappear internationally. He'll remain in federal custody until trial. What about the others? Olivia asked. His executives? Most are cooperating in exchange for reduced sentences. We've recovered additional evidence from their testimonies that corroborates everything on your flash drive. Patricia pulled out a folder and set it on the coffee table. Which brings me to why I'm here. The U.S. Attorney wants to move forward with a preliminary hearing next week. Olivia, you'll need to testify. And Lucas, we'll need you as well to establish the timeline and the threats made against you. Will Voss be there? Lucas asked. He'll be present, yes, but he'll be in custody, and there will be extensive security. You'll be completely safe. Lucas tried to imagine sitting in a courtroom with Adrian Voss watching him, the man whose people had threatened his daughter and terrorized Jennifer. The thought made his stomach turn. What happens after the preliminary hearing? Olivia asked. If the judge finds sufficient cause, and trust me, she will, we move toward trial. That could take 6 months to a year depending on how many delays Voss's lawyers try to introduce. During that time, you'll both need to be available for additional testimony and depositions, but you can resume your normal lives with some security precautions. Normal lives, Lucas repeated, like the concept was foreign. Right. Patricia's expression softened. I know this has been incredibly difficult for both of you, but what you've done here matters. Voss Energy defrauded investors out of hundreds of millions of dollars. Pension funds, retirement accounts, small businesses that trusted Voss to deliver what he promised. You're getting those people justice. That's worth something. Tell that to the employees who are about to lose their jobs when Voss Energy collapses, Olivia said quietly. Those employees were working for a company built on lies. Better they find out now and move on to legitimate opportunities than continue building their careers on a foundation that was always going to crumble. Patricia stood. I'll be in touch with more details about the hearing. For now, you're cleared to leave the safe house. Tom will drive you back to Seattle. The drive back felt surreal. After days in isolation, the city seemed overwhelming. Too many people, too much noise, too much movement. Tom dropped Olivia at her apartment in First Hill, where police had already swept for surveillance devices and ensured it was safe. Then he drove Lucas to Northgate. You've got my number, Tom said as Lucas climbed out of the SUV. Anything suspicious, anything that feels wrong, you call me immediately. We don't think Voss's organization has anyone left willing to take action against you, but better safe than sorry. I will, and thank you for everything. Just doing my job. Take care of yourself, Lucas. Lucas watched the SUV drive away, then turned to look at his apartment building. It looked exactly the same as when he'd left it 5 days ago, but he felt like a completely different person walking through the front door. Mrs. Chen was in the hallway, taking out her trash. When she saw Lucas, her eyes widened. Mr. Hayes, I was so worried. The police came asking questions about you and that nice woman who stayed over. Are you all right? I'm fine, Mrs. Chen. Just some complicated stuff with a friend. All sorted out now. And Maya? Is she okay? She's perfect. I'm seeing her tomorrow. Mrs. Chen smiled with relief. Good, good. That little girl needs her father. Inside his apartment, everything was exactly as he'd left it. Coffee cups in the sink, blanket on the couch where he'd slept that first night. Lucas stood in the middle of his tiny living room and felt the weight of the past week finally, truly hit him. He'd helped take down a billionaire. He'd protected his best friend. He'd risked everything and somehow survived. And now he had to figure out how to rebuild a normal life from the pieces. His phone buzzed. His real phone, which Tom had returned when they left the safe house. A text from Jennifer. Maya wants to know if you're still coming tomorrow. She made you a card. Lucas smiled, feeling tears prick his eyes for the first time since this whole nightmare began. Tell her I wouldn't miss it for the world, he typed back. I love you both. Then he sat down on his worn couch in his shabby apartment and felt more grateful for his ordinary life than he'd ever been before. The preliminary hearing took place on a cold Tuesday morning 3 weeks after Adrian Voss's arrest. Lucas stood outside the federal courthouse in downtown Seattle, watching people stream through the security checkpoints, and tried to calm the nervous energy coursing through him. Beside him, Olivia looked composed in a dark suit Patricia had helped her choose, but Lucas could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her fingers kept worrying the strap of her briefcase. You ready for this? He asked. I've been preparing my entire life to tell the truth under oath, she said. I just never imagined it would be against someone I used to respect. Patricia emerged from the courthouse entrance and waved them over. The judge is ready. Voss's lawyers tried to delay again this morning, but she shut them down. Let's go. Inside, the courtroom was smaller than Lucas expected, with wooden benches and fluorescent lighting that made everything feel simultaneously official and mundane. Adrian Voss sat at the defense table, flanked by three expensive-looking attorneys in perfect suits. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit, his hands shackled in front of him, and for the first time, Lucas got a good look at the man who'd turned their lives upside down. Voss was in his early 50s, with silver hair and the kind of commanding presence that suggested he was used to being the most important person in any room. Even in chains, even facing decades in prison, he radiated confidence. When his eyes swept across the courtroom and landed on Olivia, his expression didn't change. No anger, no fear, just cold calculation. Lucas felt a chill run through him. This was a man who'd threatened a 4-year-old child without hesitation. A man who'd built an empire on lies and convinced himself he was untouchable. The hearing lasted 4 hours. Olivia testified first, walking the judge through the fraud schemes with the same precision and clarity she'd once used in board meetings. She presented documents, explained accounting irregularities, described the moment she'd realized the scope of what Voss had done. Her voice never wavered, even when Voss's lead attorney tried to rattle her with aggressive cross-examination. "Miss Carter, isn't it true that you were passed over for a promotion just weeks before you suddenly discovered this alleged fraud?" "No, that's not true." "Isn't it possible that you fabricated this evidence out of spite? That you wanted to damage Mr. Voss's reputation because you felt undervalued?" Olivia looked the attorney directly in the eye. "I fabricated nothing. Every document, every transaction, every piece of evidence I provided is real and verifiable. And the only person who should feel undervalued here is every investor who trusted Adrian Voss and got betrayed." When it was Lucas's turn to testify, Patricia walked him through the timeline, Olivia arriving at his apartment, the threats against Jennifer, the chase on the highway. He described the photograph of Maya's house, the implicit danger, the way Voss's organization had tried to terrorize them into silence. Voss's attorney tried to dismiss Lucas as an unreliable witness, just a friend helping a friend with no real knowledge of the underlying fraud. But Lucas held his ground. "I don't need to understand corporate accounting to know when someone's being threatened," he said, "and I don't need a law degree to recognize that sending armed men to intimidate people is wrong." The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Barbara Chen, listened to everything with the focused attention of someone who'd spent decades weighing evidence and determining truth. When both sides had finished presenting, she didn't hesitate. "I find sufficient probable cause to bind this case over for trial. Mr. Voss will remain in federal custody without bail. Preliminary trial date is set for 6 months from today." She banged her gavel. "This hearing is adjourned." As federal marshals led Voss out of the courtroom, he looked back once at Olivia. She met his gaze without flinching, and Lucas saw something shift in Voss's expression. For just a moment, the confidence cracked, and what showed through was fear. He knew he'd lost. Outside the courthouse, reporters were waiting. Patricia had warned them this would happen, but the reality was overwhelming. Cameras, microphones, questions shouted from every direction. "Ms. Carter, how does it feel to bring down your former boss?" "Mr. Hayes, were you romantically involved with Ms. Carter?" "Is it true Voss threatened your family?" Patricia stepped in front of them like a shield. "My clients have no comment at this time. All questions should be directed to the U.S. Attorney's Office. Thank you." She hustled them into a waiting car, and they drove away while reporters continued shouting questions at their retreating vehicle. "That's going to be your life for a while," Patricia said. "High-profile case, sympathetic witnesses, a billionaire villain. The media will eat this up for months." "Great," Lucas muttered. "Just what I always wanted, to be famous for almost getting killed." Olivia reached over and squeezed his hand. "At least we're alive to complain about it." The trial itself didn't happen for another 8 months. Voss's attorneys used every delay tactic available, filing motion after motion, challenging evidence, demanding additional discovery. But Patricia and her team were relentless, methodically building a case so airtight that even the most expensive legal defense couldn't find cracks. During those months, Lucas tried to rebuild his life. He went back to driving, though he found he couldn't do the night shifts anymore. Too many dark parking lots, too many strangers in his back seat who could be anyone. Instead, he switched to day shifts and started taking classes at the community college, thinking maybe it was time to aim for something more stable than gig economy work. Maya asked him once why he'd been gone for so long, and Lucas told her a simplified version of the truth. that he'd helped a friend who was in trouble, and it had taken longer than expected, but everything was okay now. "You're a hero, Daddy," Maya said, hugging him tight. "I'm just a guy who showed up when someone needed help," Lucas replied. "That's what friends do." Olivia spent those months rebuilding too, though her path was different. Voss Energy collapsed within weeks of Adrian's arrest, hundreds of employees losing their jobs as the fraud became public. The guilt ate at her, even though Patricia kept reminding her that those jobs were built on lies and would have disappeared eventually anyway. Instead of looking for another corporate position, Olivia made a different choice. She started teaching accounting ethics at the University of Washington, using her experience with Voss Energy as a case study in how good people could miss massive fraud happening right under their noses. She also began working with a nonprofit that helped whistleblowers navigate the legal and emotional aftermath of exposing corruption. "I spent my whole life climbing someone else's ladder," she told Lucas over coffee one afternoon, 6 months after the preliminary hearing. "I think it's time I built something that actually matters." She and Ethan had started rebuilding their relationship too, slowly and carefully. They'd never be as close as they'd been before their mother's death, but they were learning to be siblings again, to value what they had instead of focusing on what they'd lost. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Lucas testified again, this time in front of a jury of 12 ordinary people who looked as overwhelmed by the scale of Voss's fraud as he'd been when Olivia first explained it. The prosecution presented hundreds of documents, dozens of witnesses, expert testimony from forensic accountants who'd spent months analyzing Voss Energy's books. Voss's defense tried to argue that the fraud had been orchestrated by subordinates without his knowledge, that he was a visionary leader betrayed by criminal employees. But the evidence was too clear, too comprehensive. The jury deliberated for less than 8 hours. Guilty on all counts. Adrian Voss was sentenced to 32 years in federal prison. He'd be in his 80s before he was eligible for parole, and even that was unlikely, given the severity of his crimes. The judge specifically cited the threats against Lucas's family as an aggravating factor, proof that Voss had shown no remorse and posed a continued danger. When the sentence was read, Voss finally showed emotion. His face went pale, his hands trembled, and for just a moment he looked like what he was, a man who'd gambled everything on never getting caught and lost. Lucas felt no satisfaction in watching him break, just a quiet sense of relief that it was finally, truly over. That evening, Lucas picked up Maya from Jennifer's house and took her out for ice cream, just the two of them. They sat at a picnic table outside the shop while Maya worked on a cone of strawberry chocolate chip, her favorite. "Daddy, your friend Miss Olivia called me yesterday," Maya said, chocolate smeared across her face. "She did?" "Yeah, she said thank you for sharing you with her when she needed help. And she said you're the bravest person she knows." Maya looked up at him with serious 4-year-old eyes. "Are you brave, Daddy?" Lucas thought about the past year, about the fear, the uncertainty, the moments when he'd wanted to run but chose to stay instead, about the choice to help a friend even when it meant risking everything he cared about. "I don't know if I'm brave," he said honestly, "but I know that when someone you care about needs help, you show up, even when it's scary, especially when it's scary. That's what matters." "Then you're brave," Maya declared with the absolute certainty only children possess. "And I'm going to be brave like you when I grow up." Lucas pulled her into a hug, ice cream and all, and felt something settle in his chest. The past year had been the hardest of his life, but it had also taught him something crucial, that ordinary people doing ordinary acts of courage could change the world, that friendship and loyalty mattered more than money or power, that sometimes, incredibly, the truth actually won. 6 months after the sentencing, Lucas got a call from Patricia. Voss Energy's assets were being liquidated to pay restitution to defrauded investors, and there was a whistleblower reward fund. Olivia was entitled to 10% of the recovered funds. "That's approximately $47 million, Patricia said. "And Olivia wants to split it with you. Says you earned it by keeping her alive long enough to testify." Lucas had laughed, thinking it was a joke. But Olivia was serious. She set up a trust fund for Maya's education, paid off all of Lucas's debts, and gave him enough money that he'd never have to drive strangers around at night again. "I can't accept this," Lucas said when they met to sign the paperwork. "You're not accepting it. You're being compensated for risking your life to help me expose fraud." Olivia smiled. "Besides, What am I going to do with $47 million? I'm a college professor living in a one-bedroom apartment. This way, Maya gets to go to any college she wants, and you get to actually be present in her life instead of working yourself to death. Lucas used the money to start a community transportation service, affordable rides for people who couldn't pay surge pricing or regular taxi rates, senior citizens getting to medical appointments, single parents getting to job interviews, people rebuilding their lives who just needed reliable transportation. He called it second chance rides, and within a year it was serving hundreds of people across Seattle. Sometimes, late at night, Lucas would think back to that moment when Olivia had shown up in his parking lot, scared and desperate, and trusting him to help. He'd made a split-second decision to open his door, to offer shelter, to stand beside someone who needed him. That single choice had changed everything, not just for him and Olivia, but for every investor who got their money back, every employee who found better jobs at honest companies, every person who saw the news coverage and realized that speaking up against corruption was possible. One ordinary person making one decent choice in a parking lot at 3 a.m. Sometimes Lucas realized that was all it took to change the world. And that was enough.